Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishwadaya Krishna Sakura Vaishnava Bhaktivinoda Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharya Nirvishesha Shandivari Pashtad Satarne. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 41. Samyanusoche tam ada patantam bratre paretaya vidudruhe yaha niyapito yena suhrit sa purya aham swaputran samanuvratena samyanusoche tamada patantam bratre paretaya vidudruheya niryapito yena suhritsvapurya aham swaputran samanuvratena samyanusoche tamada patantam bratre paretaya vidudruheya niryapito yena suhritsvapurya aham swaputran samanuvratena samyanusoche tamada patantam bratre paretaya vidudruheya niryapito yena suhritsvapurya aham swaputran samanuvratena Vaishnavis. Okay. Ratre Paretaya Vidudreheya. Synonyms. Samya, O gentle one. Anusoche, I lament. Tam, him. Adapatantam, gliding down. Bratre, on his brothers. Parataya, death. Vidudruhe, revolted against. Yaha, one who. Niryapitaha, driven out. Yena, by whom. Suhrit, well-wisher. Swapuryaha, from his own house. Aham, myself. Swaputran, with his own sons. Samanuvratena, accepting the same line of action. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. O gentle one, I simply lament for him, Dhritarashtra, who rebelled against his brother after the latter's death. By Dhritarashtra I was driven out of my own house, although I am a sincere well-wisher, because he accepted the line of action adopted by his own sons. Purport. Vidura did not ask about the welfare of his elder brother, because there was no chance of his well-being, only news of his gliding down to hell. Vidura was a sincere well-wisher of Dhritarashtra's and had a thought about him in the corner of his heart. Vidura lamented that Dhritarashtra could rebel against the sons of his dead brother Pandu, and that he could drive him, Vidura, out of his own house on the dictation of Dhritarashtra's crooked sons. In spite of these actions, Vidura never became an enemy of Dhritarashtra, but continued to be his well-wisher. And at the last stage of Dhritarashtra's life, it was Vidura only who proved to be his real friend. Such is the behavior of a Vaishnava like Vidura. He desires all good, even for his enemies. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Vidura doesn't inquire about, from Uddhava I think it is, doesn't inquire about the state of Dhritarashtra. It's like, sometimes you go to a home, a family and they have a lot of sons and daughters, and you ask, oh, how is Jerry, and how is Mary, but there's one you don't talk about. I'm not even going to ask about George because he's a wreck. So according to the universal laws, if someone is behaving in an unfortunate way, then they will experience some reaction. They will experience some reaction in the form of either they get the reaction in this life, or they take their next birth in a lower planetary system or lower species of life. Karmana daivanetrena jantur deo papatite. According to their karma and the judgment of Daiva, the Supreme Lord, they get a suitable situation in their next life. And that's why in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, Vidura didn't inquire about him because the only thing he would get would be, quote, news of his gliding down to hell. So he's taking that approach. And Vidura himself is an interesting creature. Although he's the brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu, he wasn't regarded on the same level because he took birth from a maidservant, and he took birth like in a he wasn't regarded as a member of the royal order himself. He was regarded as a Sudra. So Srila Prabhupada gives the history of that. Once there was a king, and he had his upholders of law and order, and they were after some thieves. There was a gang of thieves, so they were chasing this gang of thieves, and the thieves took shelter in the ashram of Manduka Muni. So when the police, you could say, the gendarmes, raided the place, they arrested everybody there, including Manduka Muni, saying, hey, I'm this is my ashram. I'm a saintly person. You can't. No, they took everybody. We've heard it all before. Let's round up everybody. So they went before the magistrate, and Manduka Muni was sentenced to death by being pierced by a lance. And so he was just about to be executed when someone informed the king, no, he's a great sage, Manduka Muni, he didn't do anything. So king let him go. But he was very upset by it. You think you're falsely arrested. And so Manduka Muni went to Yamaraj, who was kind of in charge in administering cosmic justice. He said, I've got a complaint to register with you. I think I've been unfairly treated. And okay, sorry. I've been unfairly treated. And Yamaraj said, well, let me have a look here. And he's got Chitragupta, who writes down the activities of everyone. Well, we see here that when you were a child, you killed an ant by piercing it with a very sharp piece of straw. So it's not that you're totally not at fault. And Manduka Muni became a little upset by that. I was just a kid, what did I know? I wasn't. And he cursed Yamaraj to become a Sudra in his next life. And that personality was Vidura, the way Srila Prabhupada explains it in one of his purports. I think it's in the first canto, describing the background of Vidura. So, nevertheless, he was a great devotee of the Lord, and the devotees of the Lord are well-wishers of everyone. They're compassionate, even for people who behave badly against them. So, in that spirit, Vidura was the well-wishing friend of Dhritarashtra, even though he had suffered at his hands, particularly by being thrown out of the palace where he had a right to live. So, Srila Prabhupada often writes from the literary point of view, some really expressive phrases. He mentions that Vidura was a sincere well-wisher of Dhritarashtra's and had a thought about him in the corner of his heart. So, I think we all have kind thoughts about someone in the corner of our heart, and it's especially auspicious to be remembered or have a great personality like Vidura think about us in the corner of his heart. So that's a real friend. Many people in this world claim to be friends of someone. And usually there's some motive. And as far as the person who is accepting the role of being a friend of someone, they have their limitations in the material world. The friend may not always be there even if he's a well-wisher, he can't do anything, or she can't do anything. They don't have the power or the ability to actually help anyone. But Krishna is the real friend of everyone. Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, he explains in the Bhagavad Gita. He never forgets. Sometimes your friend may even forget your name or who you are. Or you are, well, you said you were my friend. But, Krishna's not like that. He's never away from us. He's always in our hearts. Aham sarvasya. Let's see, what is that? Sarvasya chaham hridisani vishto. I am seated in the hearts of all as the super soul. And he's aware of everything. He knows everything about us. He's always trying to encourage us in so many ways. Like he appears within the heart as the Chaitya Guru, the Guru within the heart. He appears externally in the form of the spiritual masters, the Diksha and Shiksha Gurus. He appears in the form of the Vedic literature, appears in the form of the deities, appears in the form of prasadam, his holy name. He's trying to encourage us in every way to come to a better state of consciousness. So that is a real friend. And he's always offering us that opportunity. So I was reflecting that one of the major points that's in this purport and verse, perhaps not directly stated, but it's pretty explicitly there, is the question of free will. We always have the opportunity, the choice to surrender to Krishna or to surrender to our own selfish desires. That choice is always there for the jiva, because the jiva is part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivam so jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, Krishna says. It's eternally my part and parcel. And because Krishna has free will, the individual soul also has free will. And the perfect use of free will is to cooperate with the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one cooperates with the desire of the Supreme Lord, then one is perfectly situated. One could be either in the spiritual world or the material world. If one is cooperating with the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is perfectly situated, either in this world or the spiritual world. So, on the other hand, if one misuses the opportunity, if one misuses one's free will, then one is going to face all kinds of difficulties. One can never be satisfied in that way, because Jivara Swarupahoy Krishnara Nityadas, the eternal function of the soul, the eternal constitutional position of the soul, is to be engaged as servant of Krishna, course, there are many different kinds of servants who give their loving devotional service to Krishna. But the essential point is to have that service mood. And if one doesn't, then one finds oneself in the position of Dhritarashtra. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that at the end of Dhritarashtra's life, it was Vidura only who proved to be his real friend. So, it's mentioned in this verse that Dhritarashtra went against the interest of the Pandavas, the sons of his brother Pandu, and he favored his own son, Duryodhana, and his brothers. So he favored his own sons, who were envious of the Pandavas, and he cooperated with them and tried to deny the Pandavas their rightful place in society, and even went along with plans to have them exterminated or killed. And when they couldn't be killed, they wanted to have a war with them. So the war was fought, the Battle of Kurukshetra. And in the course of it, Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Like Arjuna, he was on his chariot, and Krishna was serving as his chariot driver. And for a moment, Arjuna became doubtful about his duty in that situation. He didn't want to kill these other people, his relatives, his gurus, and others. So he gave different reasons why, and one of them was that, well, if I kill these people, these leading personalities in society, society will go to hell. There'll be Varna Shankara. In other words, women will be exploited. There will be unwanted children, bad progeny. The whole society will be ruined. But Krishna convinced him, like Arjuna was saying, if I do my duty as a Kshatriya, there will be Varna Shankara, unwanted population. And later Krishna convinces him, no, if you don't do your duty, there will be Varna Shankara. So just like me, when I come to this world, I follow the duties of the order that I appear in. Sometimes Krishna appears in a Brahmin family, sometimes in a Kshatriya family. And when he does, he follows. He says, if I didn't follow, then there would be Varna Shankara. So I thought that was interesting. In the first part of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is giving this argument, and then later Krishna turns it against him. First Arjuna is saying, if I do my duty, there'll be Varna Shankara, and then Krishna says later, no, if we don't do our duty, there'll be Varna Shankara. So Arjuna agreed to fight, and in the battle, the Kurus, of course, were defeated and mostly killed. Almost everyone was killed on both sides. But in the end, Yudhisthira and the Pandavas were installed as rulers. And as far as Dhritarashtra, he just went. Of course, King Yudhisthira was very merciful and just, so he gave shelter to Dhritarashtra and his wife in the palace. And even though Dhritarashtra had been so opposed to them, he just took a place in the palace, accepted food and accepted maintenance from the Pandavas, from Yudhisthira in particular. And Vidura went to him and said, "This is not a very respectable, honorable position that you're taking." And so he was acting, Vidura in this case was acting as the real friend of Dhritarashtra. And taking his advice, Dhritarashtra went into the mountains with his wife Gandhari and practiced austerities and penances and went on to a better position. So these are some of the points. Maharaj? Okay. Any comments or questions? Satchidananda Prabhu.
Well, before I ask the question, that I don't remember this detail. When you mentioned Mandaka Muni, was he a child? When Mandaka Muni, when he did something wrong, was he a child?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, a thought came to my mind, maybe you can help me to understand this, that sometimes, in certain cases, Prabhupada say, for example, a child, a woman, an older man, a brahmana cannot be punished. That's one. And in other times, we also hear that fire can burn, even a child. Doesn't matter as far as the law of physics or karma. And also a thought came to my mind that even in the law, I think in America, when other countries, a child, depends on the age, of course, maybe like 3, 4, 5, they cannot be punished, if I'm not mistaken. So my question was that one of the examples given by the Mano, taken from the Mano Samhita? Because in the Mano Samhita, sometimes there are certain things that doesn't really apply to the Vaishnavas. Or, I don't know, maybe you can explain.
I was thinking about that as I was reading over the story and thinking about speaking it in the class. One thing I noted was actually he wasn't punished because the king stopped it. So that may have been part of the plan, that he be, frightened, and then the kings came and said, no, stop it, don't put the lance in him. So he actually wasn't punished, if you look at it. And sometimes, Prabhupada would say, with children, sometimes you may show the stick, but not use it. Of course, even that's questionable, I guess, but just directing it to your specific point that Archita?
Two things. Sometimes the law changes by the age. Just like in previous ages, people were culpable for their thoughts. Now in Kali Yuga, you're not. But obviously, if you don't control your mind, then you may do something wrong, and then you'll be punished. But in this particular case, Mandaka Muni made what's called a Maryada. In other words, previously, children even could be punished. But he said, because of this incident, henceforward, up till age 14, they're not culpable. That's called a Maryada, when a great personality changes the previous law. You had the same thing with, what was Bali's guru's name? Shukracharya. Yeah, there was that whole incident where he was drunk on ceremonial liquor, and then they killed his son-in-law and put it in the liquor, and he drank it. So he made a maryada that from henceforth, if you're a brahmana, you can't drink even ceremonial liquor. You can't, because previously they could. So great personalities can change the previous law. So previously, children were culpable, just like previously you were culpable for your bad thoughts, but things can change as time goes by, because people just they're not on the same level.
Very good points. Anything else? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.